I thanked Leandra for giving me a chance at life again. Her pod didn't appear to have any engines, but it floated up and vanished in a flash. The next day, I knew there would be a meeting at the club, and Ashley would likely be there. As I entered the conference room, my heart raced. There was Ashley, seated at the table among 7 other women, a tense silence hanging in the air. I pushed past the awkwardness and greeted each lady with a handshake. When I reached Ashley, I extended my right hand, and with my left, I lightly tapped the button on the device. As soon as she took my hand, I felt a small spark, a jolt of electricity, before she quickly pulled away. "Sorry, that must have been static electricity," I said, trying to play it cool. Despite Leandra's warnings, I had pushed my connection with Ashley to a high level, and I didn't want her thinking about Tuck at all. "What do you want, Mike?" she asked, sounding annoyed. "We're busy here." "I came to join the entertainment committee," I replied with a friendly smile, trying to break the ice. "I'm not interested in this," Ashley said firmly. "I love Tuck. Can't you understand that?" The other women gasped in surprise at her bold declaration, but Ashley stood her ground. I chuckled at her reaction, trying to diffuse the tension. "Ashley, let's move past our history. I heard you're planning the 4th of July celebration, and I thought my ideas might help. Some of the men have said the activities mostly cater to children and women, and I'd like to share some thoughts that might interest the guys." Barbara Harris, sitting across from Ashley, jumped in. "He's right, Ashley. My husband always complains about the 4th of July celebration. He says there's nothing for him to do except eat. We limit the drinks during the day and cut off the internet, so there's no TV or decent cell phone service. A man's input could really help." The other women quickly agreed, much to Ashley's displeasure. They invited me onto the entertainment committee. Although I wasn't sure what to expect, I felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Ashley was cold during our first meeting, and whenever I saw her or Tuck over the next few weeks, I began to worry I was doing something wrong. Part of me considered quitting the committee, but I felt a pull to stay. At the next meeting, I noticed a shift in the atmosphere between Ashley and me. Being on the committee was a surprise. I had some great ideas that I thought the men would enjoy. We discussed everything from a family softball game to a couple scavenger hunt with prizes for a baseball game and a nice dinner out. During the meeting, Ashley didn't glare at me like before. In fact, she smiled at me several times, and it sent my heart racing. At the end of the meeting, she stopped me at the door and asked if I'd like to have lunch with her. "I want to discuss the 4th of July celebration," she said, her tone softer than before. I agreed without hesitation. From that moment on, we started having lunch together once or twice a week, pretending to discuss the upcoming events. Each time we met, Ashley found little ways to get closer to me, a spark igniting between us. As the 4th of July celebration approached, everything changed. I was busy with my tasks when Ashley asked if I could help her grab some more drinks from the storage shed. Once we were inside, she locked the door behind us. As we stood there, she began to share her feelings, surprising me with her honesty. In that moment, I felt a strong connection between us, and I knew I was stepping into a complicated situation with a married woman. Ashley and I started meeting in secret, finding places to escape the prying eyes of the ranch, even venturing a few counties away. At first, I was nervous, unsure of what I was getting myself into, but those feelings of uncertainty faded as we shared many special moments together. As the days turned into weeks, our bond deepened, and I found myself captivated by Ashley in ways I never expected. This new chapter in my life was unfolding in ways I couldn't have imagined, but I knew I had to tread carefully. The stakes were high, and I could feel the storm brewing on the horizon. Over the next few months, despite our efforts to keep things low-key, rumors about Leandra and me began to spread throughout town. Whenever someone would ask, I would brush it off, urging them to think clearly and not jump to conclusions. But the gossip continued to swirl, and things came to a head about 2 months after our relationship started. One evening, during a particularly heartfelt moment, I found myself reflecting on my feelings for Ashley. It hit me like a bolt of lightning, they had changed. I still cared about her, but the intensity of those feelings had dulled. It wasn't the overwhelming love I once felt. "Mike, can I ask you something?" Ashley said softly, her tone serious as we sat alone together. "Of course," I replied, bracing myself. "Mike, I made a big mistake," she said, emotion thick in her voice. "I shouldn't have left you. I realize now how much I love you. I miss you so much. Can I come back?" Looking into her eyes, I could see her vulnerability. Just a few months earlier, I would have jumped at the chance to have her back, but now, it felt different. Part of me wanted her back, but it didn't seem as crucial as it once had. "I'd love to have you back," I said slowly, weighing my words carefully, "but you're a married woman, and I think Tuck would have something to say about that." "I've decided to divorce him," she said plainly, and I felt my heart drop. I was taken aback. This was classic Ashley, always focused on her own needs. Tuck, while not the easiest person to deal with, was clearly aware of what was happening. The gossip had reached him, prompting him to take action. He hired someone to follow Ashley, and somehow, a camera was set up in the places where we met. I had no idea how they got those images and videos since we switched motels nearly every time. The confrontation between Tuck and Ashley ended badly. The next time I saw her, she had a bruise on her face, and I was furious that he had hurt her. Even though both Ashley and Tuck had deceived me, I never wanted to hurt her. There were moments when anger threatened to boil over, but I held back. I was taught not to hurt others. "Jake, you know what happened next," I said, reflecting on those tumultuous days. The divorce between Tuck and Ashley turned into a messy affair. Tuck fought tooth and nail at every chance he got. As the divorce moved through the courts, Ashley returned to the ranch, and you weren't happy with me for allowing your ex-mother, as you still called her, back into the house. To my surprise, most of my friends took Tuck's side. They had supported me when Ashley left, but now they were socializing with him and upset with me for allowing Ashley back into my life. It bothered me that Tuck was clearly in the wrong, yet I was being seen as the problem. Everyone seemed to want to put the blame on Ashley, but her charm had clearly protected her for years. Having Ashley back was nice for the first month. I enjoyed her company, but soon, she wanted everything to return to how it was when we were first married. The problem was, I had changed. I don't quite remember what sparked our argument, but it escalated quickly until Ashley packed a bag and left. Oddly enough, I didn't feel sad. I didn't reach out to her. I came to believe what people say, that time can heal a broken heart. The day after Ashley left, Tuck found me at the feed store. I could see the storm brewing in his eyes. He wanted to confront me, but I wanted no part of it. "I need to talk to you," he said in a rough tone, his fists clenched at his sides. "I really don't want to argue, Tuck," I replied, trying to keep my cool. "Ashley left me yesterday." His hands, which had been raised in a challenging manner, dropped to his sides, and doubt crossed his face. "You're just trying to avoid me," he accused. "Listen, Tuck," I sighed, "we both know I can hold my own, but why bother? Ashley left last night. If you want her back, now is your chance to find her." He stared at me, weighing whether to believe me. In the end, he chose to go find her himself. With Ashley gone, I finally had time to think, and I felt a wave of shame wash over me. I never thought I would be involved with a married woman, but here I was. Even though Tuck seemed to thrive on my pain, I felt no satisfaction in seeing him unhappy. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they did. Tuck found Ashley at her parents' house and tried to convince her to come back with him. She made it clear that she loved me, not him, and told him she was going ahead with the divorce. That was a tough blow for Tuck. "Jake, when you mentioned that Ashley had walked away from me, Ashley insisted it was just a small fight and that we would be back together soon. But you know how this goes. I didn't hit Ashley back. Still, she kept trying to reach me with calls, emails, and surprise visits. At the same time, she was turning down Tuck, who was feeling increasingly despondent about it all. Sadly, Tuck made a very desperate choice shortly after because I wouldn't take Ashley back. The emotional toll on both him and Ashley was profound. I felt more upset about what happened to them than I had during my breakup with Ashley. One person lost his life, while the other struggled to cope, and I couldn't shake the feeling of guilt. No one blamed me for what had happened since Ashley and I had split for the second time. They all thought I had done the right thing, but deep down, I knew I should have been brave enough to move on when Ashley first left me. About a month after Tuck's death, I found myself sitting in my chair, feeling utterly defeated. I was nursing a drink when someone knocked at the door. When I opened it, I was pleasantly surprised to see Leandra standing there, her face brightening as she stepped inside. "Hey, it's good to see you," I said, letting her in and guiding her to the couch. We sat down to talk, and I could tell she was glad to see me. But then, a worried look crossed her face. "Is your wife here?" she asked, glancing around. "I'm not married," I replied, shaking my head. Her eyes lit up as she moved closer to me, her excitement palpable. Then, to my astonishment, she pulled out a hologram of a baby. "This baby is our son," she said, her voice filled with pride. "He's beautiful, Jake. He looks a bit like you when you were small, but with pointed ears." I felt a rush of emotions, surprise, joy, and a flicker of hope. This was unexpected. I had been drowning in the aftermath of my past, and here was Leandra, offering a glimpse of a future I had never imagined. He was healthy and had the chance to grow up strong. She named him Dallin, after her grandfather. "So now you have a half-brother from another world," she said with a gentle smile. We chatted for a while, and I found myself sharing everything that had happened. "I really messed things up this time," I admitted, feeling the weight of my mistakes. "I wasn't thinking straight. I ignored your advice and raised the percentage to 98, even though I knew it could cause problems. I wanted Ashley to be mine alone and didn't consider how it might affect her feelings." As I spoke, I recalled Leandra's words about side effects. "You mentioned they weren't supposed to be too severe, and so far, I haven't noticed any negative effects on Ashley from the higher percentage," I continued. But there was a twist. The more Ashley loved me, the more my own feelings for her faded. I realized it was my pride that was holding me back. Leandra looked concerned, her brow furrowing with worry. "Let me check how you're feeling," she said as she took my hand and focused on her device. A big smile broke across her face, and she hugged me tightly. "You're doing better than I expected," she said, her eyes sparkling with relief. "But I have to apologize for something." "Apologize? Why?" I asked, puzzled. "I wasn't completely truthful with you before I left," she confessed. "I didn't mention that at 89%, your ex-wife would have loved only you. And I also didn't tell you that I changed the settings so that as her love for you grew, your love for her would fade. I couldn't go into that range unless you were okay with it." I was taken aback, staring at Leandra in shock as I tried to process what she had just revealed. My expression must have shown my surprise because Leandra looked frightened. "Are you really mad at me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, I'm not mad," I replied, shaking my head slowly. "I'm just trying to figure out what's happened. On one hand, I've finally seen Ashley for who she really is. I noticed she wasn't very nice to me. Still, I feel really bad about how I treated her. Can you do anything to fix this? Maybe make it so she doesn't have these feelings for me anymore?" Leandra shook her head, her expression serious. "I'm afraid not. You can only change someone's feelings once. If I tried to alter her feelings now, it could lead to serious problems." That evening, I cooked dinner for Leandra and myself, a small gesture of gratitude for all she had done. After our meal, as we prepared for bed, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The following morning, I woke up feeling better than I had in a long time. The guilt still lingered, but I knew I had to learn to live with it. As I made breakfast, I joked with Leandra, "Am I going to be a dad again?" She smiled and nodded, her eyes shining with excitement. "This time, it's a girl." I laughed, shaking my head in disbelief. Those Thalian women really are fertile. Leandra then shared stories about her last mission. Out of the 24 women who came to Earth, 14 returned expecting babies, and 6 brought their partners along. She paused for a moment, her eyes sparkling with hope. "Jake, would you consider coming back to my world with me?" This time, without hesitation, I said yes. I had thought about it, and the idea of starting anew on Talia intrigued me. "So, by the time you read this, I will have been on Talia for 7 years, I wrote. After agreeing, I began to ponder how I would earn a living in a completely different world. Leandra laughed again, her laughter ringing like music. "People on my planet work for fun, not because they have to. Plus, since you can have children, the government will provide for you. And since I'll have 2 children and my partner will be with me, I won't have to go on missions again." She didn't specify how many children she wanted, but she emphasized that our relationship would be special, just between us. "That's perfectly fine with me," I said. "I feel like you're more than enough." As I wrote, I reflected on my journey. "Jake, this is the story of how I disappeared," I began. "I know it sounds unbelievable. If I hadn't experienced it myself, I wouldn't believe it either. If my writing seems a little off, it's because I didn't type it myself. The Thalians have a machine that reads your thoughts and transcribes your story. It's not how I would have written it, but it captures the important points well." I paused, contemplating the next envelope in the safe deposit box, the one containing my father's last will and testament. It felt surreal to think about my future without him. "You will inherit most of my belongings, including the ranch," he wrote. "You will need to work with your siblings, but I believe that won't be a problem. I have also set up a trust for your sister and another for your mother." His next request struck me hard. "I have 2 more things I hope you can do for me. First, I want you to reach out to your sister and build a better relationship with her. She decided to stay with your mother, but I think she might regret that choice. I cut her out of my life because I felt betrayed, and that was a mistake. I should have tried to reconnect with her earlier, but my pride got in the way. I felt a pang of regret at my father's words. I had been so caught up in my own pain that I hadn't considered her feelings. Second," he continued, "this may be more difficult for you, but I truly ask you to do it. Please reach out to your mother. Let her be part of your life. Tell her that I loved her but I am no longer here. I know you were very upset with her for leaving us, but I have to admit that I didn't support her as I should have. She doesn't deserve to suffer more. Please let her be a part of your family. I hope she can know her grandchildren if you have any." His words hung heavy in the air, a mix of sorrow and longing. I had never asked for anything before, but he was really asking me to do this for him. At the bottom of the last page, I found a handwritten note. "Jake, I have to leave now. Leandra has made a way for us to go together, and we need to hurry before the chance disappears. I want you to know that I have loved you since before you were born. You have always made me proud. I'm sorry for my past choices. I wish I could change them, but I can't. You can help make things right, but no matter what, I will love you always. Please give your wife and any grandchildren my best wishes." I leaned back in my chair, taking a deep breath as I let the gravity of my father's words sink in. The small room around me felt stifling as I processed the loss, the love, and the responsibility that lay ahead. I opened the envelope with his will again, reading through the details. Just as he had said, I had control over most things. My aunts and uncles would have a say in some matters, but they had always trusted me to manage the businesses, especially the ranch. With a mix of sadness and determination, I prepared to honor my father's legacy, knowing that the next chapter of my life was about to unfold in ways I never imagined. I learned that my father had taken out a life insurance policy specifically to cover any taxes associated with his estate. This meant that everything he left behind would be passed on without any tax complications. There were 2 trusts, each set up for $2 million, ensuring that my mother and sister would be well taken care of. As for my father's requests, I knew I needed to think them through carefully. I didn't feel that I had anything to forgive him for, but I wanted to discuss his wishes with my wife before proceeding. First, I had to get his will to our lawyer. Epilogue. It was Christmas time, and I stood at the exit of one of the bustling airport terminals, donning a silly chauffeur's hat and clutching a small sign that read T. Weaver and Family. By my side was my mother, Ashley. It had taken me 2 months to gather the courage, but with Jenny's unwavering support, I finally picked up the phone and called my mother and sister. When I asked my mom if she'd like to join us for dinner, her voice sparkled with excitement. Dinner turned out to be a delightful evening. I had Jenny and our 3 boys with me, Mike Jr., Tommy, and Billy. My mom was a bit nervous about meeting my family, but she kicked things off on the right foot by bringing gifts for the boys, 3 shiny new video games. Jenny treated my mom like they were old friends, and as the evening progressed, I made sure to share that my father had always cared deeply about his relationship with her, even after he had passed. I could see my mother's face relax as she listened intently to my words. After that first dinner, we began inviting her over more often. We even took a week off, allowing Mom to look after the boys. It warmed my heart to see how much she enjoyed their company, and the kids loved having her around. My talk with Tanya, my sister, was a little more complicated. The atmosphere was tense at first. She was unsure why I wanted to reconnect after all this time and was worried about the unresolved issues from our past. I reassured her that I wasn't bringing up old wounds. Instead, I informed her that we had found our father's will. This made her cautious, so I offered to send her a copy. After she read it, I suggested that we meet in person to discuss things further. Surprisingly, Tanya called me instead. She wanted to know more about the trust. I figured it would be best to talk face to face, so I planned a trip to visit her. When I arrived, Tanya was genuinely happy to see me, which caught me off guard. She enveloped me in a warm hug and introduced me to her husband, Sid, and their 3 kids, Todd, Chad, and Linda. They lived in North Conway, New Hampshire, so I flew into Portland, Maine, and drove to their charming 4-bedroom house perched on a hillside. Sid worked at a local bank and seemed like a really nice guy, while their kids, aged 10, 8, and 7, were incredibly polite. I jokingly suggested to Tanya that she might want to teach my kids some manners, hoping our children would bond since they were close in age. My boys were 9, 8, and 7. The visit went incredibly well. When I explained to my sister how the trust was set up, I could see the relief wash over her. She looked a little confused and embarrassed when I learned they couldn't afford a lawyer, so I broke everything down as simply as I could. I explained that she could use the income from the trust for her lifetime, and when she eventually passed away, the trust would go to her children. Hearing this news filled Tanya with happiness. As I was preparing to leave, I asked her if she and her family had any plans for Christmas. She mentioned they would just be staying home. On impulse, I invited them to the ranch. At first, she hesitated, concerned they might not be able to afford the trip, but I reminded her about the financial support from the trust. Sid agreed and encouraged her. When Tanya's kids found out they were going to a ranch for Christmas, they exploded with excitement. Now here I was, back at the airport, waiting for my sister, whom I hadn't seen in nearly 10 years. I felt a mix of nervousness and anticipation. I don't know where you are, Dad, but thank you for helping to bring our family together. As the narrative draws to a close, I want to take a moment to connect with all of you, our listeners of Temptress Cheating Tales. If you enjoyed this story and want to keep up with our latest content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to sharing the next wonderful story with you all.